I love making risotto, and whenever I make it, it always reminds me of my mother. It's something she always used to have in the fridge or on the bench after school, in primary school especially, and I'd come home and it'd be sitting there waiting for me. It's one of those things that I always made for my children as well, and sometimes not just for an afternoon snack, but sometimes for a Sunday night dinner, and that's okay too. It can be have a breakfast, lunch or dinner, snack, whatever. But it's one of those things, there are recipes that I like to make that remind me of my mother and my father as well, of course. Well, I came to writing quite accidentally actually. It was after my mother passed away, so she died quite young, and my children actually asked me, it was quite a few months later, all the food that Yaya used to make. Nothing was ever documented, nothing had been written down. So they said to me, Mum, I think it'd be a great idea if you started writing these recipes down so we actually have something to look back on and to cook from. So it was from that moment really when I started writing recipes down, and it did take quite a long time, quite a few years in fact actually, because again there was nothing ever documented, so I had to from scratch write the recipes and do all the method and the ingredients and all that kind of thing. And I do remember actually when I was writing the recipes as well, I was doing them just when I had time, because it was never going to be a schedule. I didn't have a deadline, it was going to be for my family. But I remember going into the butcher and just saying, give me a handful of that mince. And then he'd pick up a handful. I said, can you please weigh it now for me? After the second or third visit, he said, Mary, what are you doing? I said, I'm actually writing a cookbook. I need to have these things weighed. Before I knew it, I had about 100 recipes. And I thought, this is actually, this is good. I'll type them all up and give them all to the kids and my children, my nieces, nephews. They can all have Yaya's recipes. And then my eldest daughter, in fact, said, I think you should put some little stories to these too, because it'll make it a bit more personal about Yaya and Papu and their story. So I started writing little stories to go with it and put little photos and some paintings that I do and made it into a little booklet for my family. And then again, my children, who can be quite pushy at times, and I thank them for that actually, they encouraged me to go to a publisher, which I actually sat on for about almost 12 months because I didn't think that anybody would be interested in home cooking, Greek home cooking. I did remember the day very clearly, in fact, getting up one morning and thinking, okay, today's the day. I'm gonna do it. So I got the computer out and started looking for publishers in Australia, came up with a list of them, started making some phone calls, and I left it at that. I didn't hear anything for maybe 3 months, and I just probably forgot all about it, in fact. And then all of a sudden I did get a phone call one day, a number from Sydney. When I looked at my phone, I thought, oh, this might be important, I better answer this. I don't know who it is. And it was the publisher. And they said to me, well, we'd like a contents page. Can you send us a contents page and anything else you've got? And just over the phone, they said, we have a contract, we'll be writing one up for you and we'll put that in the mail. I remember sitting with the publisher and saying to them, I don't really mind how many books they sell. We can sell 5 copies and I'll be happy, because this is not the reason I wrote these recipes. It was not ever to be anything out in the public. And it's quite exposing yourself in a way, I guess, and really being, this is me, this is my food that I love to cook. These are my stories, my family stories, and sharing that can be a little bit difficult, I guess, at times. But we did it, and within 6 months the book was a bestseller. Then things just started snowballing one after the other. Then the second book came along, A Mediterranean Kitchen, which was, an extension, I suppose, of what I cook at home. I don't just cook Greek food, I cook Mediterranean. I love Italian food and a bit of Spanish food and that kind of thing. So that was kind of just a flow on from the first book. And then I became very interested and did a lot more research into the Mediterranean diet. And that's how the third book came along. In my first 2 cookbooks, there are some photographs of my own artwork. I love to paint, and it was again my children's suggestion that I add some of those paintings into my books. I look at painting, especially my own painting, as journaling, but without the words. So they're pictures and colours. So my paintings, if you have a look at the things that I did maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I did a lot of botanical artwork. Very controlled, very detailed, very, very different work to what I do now. And that changed probably 14 years ago. Different things happening in my life at the time, and my painting changed. My style of painting changed dramatically. And sometimes I may sit down and not even have anything in mind about what I want to do or what I'm going to paint. But the way you feel and the emotions will guide you. Oh, the best part of cookbook writing, I love every bit of it. From the moment you come up with an idea and a concept and you think this could actually really work, and putting that down on paper and making some notes and then researching into it and then talking to people, and I love that, especially with the books I've done so far and the ones I'm working on. I'm always working on something, and going to Greece and talking to people in their own homes. And everyone is just so generous in sharing. You ask, what is your favourite meal? And they're very happy to tell you and even give you the recipe and just make notes. And I love that, because you listen to their story, you listen to the way they want to eat and what they are eating and how they're eating that food. It's not just about what they're eating, but how they're eating it. And by that I mean when people are sitting down together at a table and sharing a meal. And that's as important as what you're eating. And of course, getting that first copy in the mail, it's pretty special too. There's definitely a place for hard copy cookbooks in the digital age today. I think people are going back, and I'm seeing that with young people and adults too, going back to basics, like I always like to say. People like to, and I know myself, I like to still go out and buy a book and hold it and read it like I'm reading a novel. So it's not just the recipes that I'm reading, it's about the person who's written it and their story and where those recipes have come from. Because every recipe does have a story behind it. And I think that's what makes the recipe even more real, I guess, in a lot of ways. If you understand where it's come from, the people that cooked it, the country they were from, and all the background information, it becomes so much more interesting when you're cooking. I did a lot of research into the blue zones, where people are living to 100 and beyond and living a really healthy, well life. And I looked at Ikaria in particular, because it's a Greek island, of course. Met some lovely people over there, made some connections and started talking to them about the way they live. And it was actually a friend who suggested to me about the idea of a workshop in Ikaria. She had heard of people, there are people that obviously do these kind of things, workshops all over the world. And she said, Mary, I'm a teacher as well. And she said you could do something in Ikaria and share that knowledge with other people. And we had our very first workshop about 3 years ago now. We took a group of people that wanted to come along and learn about the blue zones. So the whole idea for me was about sharing the knowledge that the blue zones and what it encompasses, the whole idea of the blue zones and why people are living a long life, about the food, about the Mediterranean diet. That was what inspired me, but it became a lot more than I ever imagined, because it's been a few years now and going again this September. But every group of people that comes go away with something completely different. And they may come along thinking, I'm going to go to a beautiful Greek island and learn about how they cook and make some lovely meals, we do all that as well, of course, and we have a lot of fun. But there are people that walk away thinking it's been life-changing. I've come away from Ikaria learning that it's not just the food that we eat that's important in our life and our health. It is the way we eat that food. Of course, the food they eat is very important. We know the food is important. It's a Mediterranean diet, the olive oils, the plant-based diet, all those things that we already know are good for us. They exercise naturally. By that, not going to the gym, but actually just walking everywhere they need to go. They work in their gardens. So they're getting that exercise naturally every day. But the most important thing, and the thread, I think, from all the places that are part of the blue zone, because they're not all eating the Mediterranean diet. Part of the blue zone, there's Okinawa in Japan, there's Costa Rica, there's California, there's 5 places, and they're not all eating the Mediterranean diet. But the common thread is that sense of connectiveness, sense of belonging to a community, and that's the element to them living a longer life. So there's a lot from Ikaria that I've learned about eating well, exercising naturally, having that rest time, taking the time to rest, and taking the time needed. And this is something I learned from the lady that I work with over there, Thea. She said to me one day, Mary, you need to take the time needed to do whatever it is you're doing, whether that is going to visit someone and spending time with someone, or whether it is you're writing a book or you're doing a painting, or whatever it happens to be. Give it the time it requires. Don't rush things. I think, gosh, we live by our watches, don't we? We really do. We're just always on a time schedule, and over there they're not. But I do remember actually one morning having coffee with Thea's husband, Ilya, in the morning, and I said to Ilya, you know, it's a question that you've already been asked many times over. How do you guys, you know, what is your secret to living longer? He said, Mary, we don't aim at putting years into our life, we aim at putting life into our years. And I thought a lot about that. I thought, yes, well, that's very true, because they live in the moment. They live at their fullest. They don't leave things and I'll do it next tomorrow, but they'll live in the moment. And I think that's also another key element for them, for their longevity. It's just, they have this amazing, happy life. And I think that's, if we can all take a part of that when we come back home, we can all have a better life.